Like, she had surgery on an infected wrist.
Oh.
She had cerebellar migraines. Now, I looked for a specific definition for that, and I couldn't find one. I know what a migraine is. It's an intense headache. Sometimes they call them cluster headaches. And I used to suffer from them regularly. I haven't had one since I quit smoking, though, so I don't know if it was the smoking or if stopping smoking somehow cured. I don't know. But, so I don't know exactly what a cerebellar migraine is. If anybody knows, please help, because I could find references to cerebellar stuff. I could find references to migraines. Couldn't find references to both combined. She also suffered from insomnia, like all of our children.
What?
You're the only one of the kids that sleeps. Allie's up all night, Caitlin's up all night, Lexi's up all night. You're the only child that sleeps.
That's what I was referring to, yeah.
Let's see. Now, the birth of the couple's first child, which technically counts as a medical issue, was their son on January 20th, 1982. She was on maternity leave for 6 weeks and then returned to her fellowship in hematology and oncology at the University of Cincinnati. Their second child, a daughter, was born 2 years later. Again, she returned to her studies after maternity leave, and by 1985, she had completed her fellowship. She went into private practice in hematology and oncology as her husband finished the last year of his cardiology fellowship, and that was mid-80s.
I see.
This next section is called Kansas City, Here We Come. Because Green and her husband both joined established medical practices in the Kansas City, Missouri area. After a year, Green started her own private practice, which prospered until she became pregnant and took time off work for another maternity leave. The couple's third child, another daughter, was born on December 13th, 1988. She attempted to resume her medical career after her last maternity leave, but her practice faltered and her chronic pain increased. Now, as the children grew older, they were enrolled in the Pembroke Hills School, which is a private school in KC. I actually don't know if it's still a thing. I haven't heard of it since the 80s, so. And in 92, she gave up her practice and became a homemaker, working part-time on medical peer reviews and similar things. Medical professionals who knew and worked with her at that time described her as emotionally cold to her patients and obsessed with her husband and what he was doing.
I see.
Now, it's important to note that in later, I couldn't find anywhere that it happened at the time, but later he said that it was this point she began self-medicating with sedatives and narcotics to treat pain from infections and injuries periodically. In speaking to Ann Rule, he claimed to have confronted her various times with issues about her demeanor, handwriting, and speech, which he said indicated drug intoxication. Each time he confronted her, he insisted she stop using the medications. According to him, she would stop briefly and then resume.
Lovely. Yeah, she sounds like a real winner.
Don't take drugs.
Yes, baby, you're right. Don't take drugs.
Now, at this point, their children were all engaged in various activities. Their son was big into soccer and ice hockey. Their older daughter was into ballet, so much so, in fact, she was a ballerina with the State Ballet of Missouri by the age of 10, and the younger daughter was also into dance. Now, it was at this time, due to A, she was working from home, and B, her husband was working long hours, that Green accompanied her children to various events. Other parents' perception of her varied at this point, with some calling her a supportive mother, while others felt she drove her children too hard and put down their efforts too often.
Wow. That's the exact opposite of... Okay. I guess you don't really know what she does with her children until you see it.
Right. Now, her husband later admitted that while he felt the marriage was never ideal and they did not often express their love for one another, even at the early stages of marriage, that things began to feel out of control. He claimed that Green seemed to lack adult coping skills during difficult times and often went into a rage where she harmed herself or broke things and never gave any thought to whether she was in public or private during these episodes. He admitted by this point he was working long hours away from home to avoid arguments and what he called his wife's shortcomings as a homemaker. This led to Green telling the children about what she thought their father was doing wrong. Hearing this, the children began to resent and disobey Dad to the point where the father and son had physical altercations. Okay, I gotta make some comments here, and I will invite you all to do the same. But one, okay, if you're working long hours away from home to be away from the person you're married to, stop being married to that person. That's just what you gotta do, I think. Also, when you're talking about someone's shortcomings as a homemaker, I think you're overlooking a lot. I mean, God, I'm not the cleanest person in the world. And I think I could clean every day, and just something about me, things are going to clutter around me. That's who I am. And you are much better at that sort of thing, but even you have kind of a level of clutter you're okay with, right, and then a level that you're like, we can't live like this.
Yeah.
And even though they're different, we can adapt to one another. And right. I think that's where a successful relationship goes. Sure. Also, bleeding it into your children, never good. And
if you just do that, they're not gonna cross the other person. You should just get divorced.
Whatever your problems are as a couple, your children shouldn't know it. And even if they do know it, then you turn around and go, look, yes, we had a fight or an argument or whatever it was, but we still love each other, and we just get upset sometimes. Being around other humans, you do that.
Right.
Well, this is the issue being that would be the mature or adult thing to do, and as we unfortunately are getting ready to see in this situation, very obviously those basic skills were extremely lacking, so...
They act more like children than they act more like they're like a bunch of goons than they do parents. Just saying.
Now, in January of 94, he asked Green for a divorce. She reacted violently, shouting and throwing things.
Whoa! Hey, calm down.
No big surprise there with what we already know about her temper.
No, I know.
She claimed that while she believed he was having affairs, she was surprised by his desire to end the marriage. He moved out, although he remained in contact and shared custody of the children. After some time, they attempted to reconcile, assuming a larger house would help ease their burden. They initially put a bid on a 6-bedroom home in Prairie Village, Kansas, but her husband backed out before the sale went through because of his worries about the state of their marriage and their debt load. It was at this point that their home in Missouri caught fire while the family was out due to an electrical short in a power cord. The couple's insurance paid out on the damage, and the family moved into the husband's apartment until the purchase of the Prairie Village home could be renegotiated.
Sounds convenient.
It does, but the insurance company investigated, and they didn't, and was eventually found that it did start at that power cord. So, and it happened while they were out. So unless she is a genius of fire, I don't know how that would have.
Okay, well, we know that she's smart, according to, what's been discussed up to this point. Your average Joe child, our kid is smart, but none of our children have taught themselves to read before the age of 3. I mean, she's obviously got some sick, twisted genius going on in her head. Pardon my French, but...
Now, the couple put effort into avoiding the issues that had led to their separation, with Green attempting to do a better job as a homemaker while her husband curtailed his work hours to spend more time with the family. This did not last, and by the end of 94, they had both gone back to their old ways, and their marriage was strained once more. However, to avoid another confrontation with Green, and looking forward to a trip to Peru the family had planned for June 95, along with several other Pembroke Hill students and parents, he decided to hold off on discussing divorce until after the trip. It was on this trip that the husband met and befriended a woman we'll call Maggie. It's not her actual name. Whose children also attended the school. Maggie was a registered nurse married to an anesthesiologist. Pardon my French.
There you go.
Who was unhappy with her marriage. This led the two to start an affair shortly after returning from the trip. Affair's never good.
Yeah, no, don't.
In late July of 95, he again asked Green for a divorce. Green once again responded badly, announcing to the children that their father was leaving them. Green was very upset that a broken home might disqualify your children from debutante events like the Bells of the American Royal. Okay, I have lived in Kansas City most of my life, or one of its suburbs. When I was very young, Mom moved me to Rapid City, South Dakota for maybe a year, maybe. And we went to Denver when I was just barely out of Mom's stomach. But I don't think we lived there. I think we just visited. And then, moved to California with you. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I've lived in or around Kansas City most of my life. Researching this, first time I ever heard of the Bells of the American Royal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Didn't know we had such things here. Wouldn't have cared if we did. Would have campaigned to stop it. Because it sounds disgusting to me. I mean, just sounds like very classist, kind of,
Oh, well, yeah. And that's actually probably exactly what it is, but,
Sounds like something that the children would get lost at, and you would lose them.
Now, even with the upcoming divorce, her husband initially chose not to move out of the family home. He was concerned that Green was suddenly consuming large quantities of alcohol while supervising the children. After running the kids to their various activities, Green would spend her evenings drinking at home, sometimes to the point of unconsciousness. She would drink almost always to the point of losing her inhibitions about the things she said in front of her kids. They called him home from work because they found their mom completely unresponsive. She had drunk so much that she wasn't responding at all. Now, by the time he was able to get out of work and get home, she had vanished. And he went to look for her. She had hidden in the basement, but she claimed later to have been wandering the town hoping to be struck by a car because, well, that's mature.
What's the matter, Krysta?
Dumb as heck.
Finally, he moved out of the home over concerns for his own safety. You think?
Well, yes, but
the children?
Did he move out, or did he and the children move out?
He moved out.
Right. That's the issue.
Sir, your children, they are in danger. Oh my goodness.
But, okay. But by this point, the kids were almost entirely on it. He was having fist fights with his son, I get leaving them there because that's where they want to stay. I don't think it's right, but I get his desire to leave them there. And I get him believing that she wouldn't hurt the kids intentionally.
Still, abuse is abuse.
So, I think we need to stop here and hear a word from our sponsors. What do you guys think?
I think that's a good idea.
I need to take a deep breath.
Okay.
All the deep breaths.
Deep breath. Om.
No.
Om.
No.
Breathing deeply. All right. Om. And we're back. And we're calm.
Ish.
I'm not even calm. He was talking almost the whole time. When I was trying to breathe. That is not okay.
Now, on October 24th, in the early morning, he received a phone call at his apartment from a neighbor who alerted him that his family home in Prairie Village was on fire. Obviously not a neighbor of of his at the apartment complex, but a former neighbor from where he lived with his family. Now, there was a hang-up call to 911 around 12:20 that